All right, so this is a video I've been wanting to make for quite a while. Um, I wanted to talk about what it's like being average looking as a man. And specifically, I am speaking from my own perspective. I am a man in my mid 30s. You can see me, you can decide for yourself if you think I'm average looking or above average looking, if maybe you're blind, I don't know. Or if you think I'm below average looking, I think personally, I think I'm a bit below average looking. Some people that have seen me on here have said they think I'm actually average or above average looking. So, that's up to you. But my life experience and all the rejection I've faced, and I will get into this a bit later, but it's not, rejection isn't the main thing here. Kind of the overarching theme about being average looking as a man, and it gets more and more so this way the older you get. It's not just the constant rejection that happens, yeah, but the worst part is that it's not just that people treat you badly, it's that nobody cares about you. And that's the cold hard truth right there. Nobody cares about you, okay? If you're not good looking, so if you're just average or if you're below average, then that's it, you're nobody really cares about you. Women don't care about you. You're invisible to them. I mean, you're invisible to women up to the point that you actually try to talk to one of them, and then you're not invisible anymore. Then they think you're some kind of threat or something. So that's one thing. I guess we'll get into it. If you are not an attractive man, okay, so if you're average or below average, sub 8, as they might say, yes, if you're uglier, you have it worse off than someone that's just average looking. I know there's lots of guys that have it way worse off than I do, but generally we're all in the same boat in the sense that we don't really have much chances with women. Most of us are chronically lonely. Unless you are attractive as a man, you're probably chronically lonely. By the way, I did intentionally set the camera angle up like this because this is the angle, you might think, okay, that's a weird camera angle. That's not straight on. That's not showing you in the way that most people would see you. But the thing is, I'm actually kind of tall, which is a good thing generally. But this isn't my best angle. But because I am kind of tall, the average height woman, she's looking at me from below, right? So this is kind of the angle that any woman that's seeing me walking down the street, or if I were talking to a woman, this is what I look like to her. And it's not really good, You can see that obviously my head is kind of a bit like a cone head, I have kind of a small cranium circumference. And you know what? I'll go back in and edit it later, but I will include a clip of me measuring the circumference of my head so you can see how it is. I have a very, very far below average skull circumference, and that's one of my biggest issues. But yeah, sorry, I'm rambling a bit. I didn't prepare anything for this. But yeah, just what it's like being an unattractive man. It's bad. you're invisible to women up to the point that you actually talk to one of them, and then you're a terrifying freak of nature or something like that, I guess. One important point I want to make is that when you are only average looking as a man, or even below average looking, or especially if you're below average looking as a man, even if you do get a chance to actually get anything going with a woman, it's not love. And it's usually, you're not her first choice, basically, is what it is. You might, as an average looking man, you might have, on occasion, the chance to have something romantic with a woman. It happens for average looking guys on occasion, but it's never good. Okay, so I'll just give you a brief rundown on some of my personal experience. I've only ever had one girlfriend, and that was pretty recent. Okay, and we only broke up actually 2 or 3 weeks ago. But we only dated for about a week, maybe 2 weeks, I don't really know. And I think she was just using me, honestly, to maybe try to get citizenship in this country. Something like that. I don't really know, but basically, without going into too much detail, because I've talked about that in other videos, she told me up front, from like as soon as we started dating, that I was not going to be having intercourse with her. That was completely off the table until we got married. Okay? There was going to be none of that. Now, that would be, I think I would be fine with that. I think I could live with that. But the problem is that she also told me, she revealed this to me a little later on. She told me that some other guy, she let him do that with her, and when they weren't even dating, okay? And yeah, she told me like, oh, I regret doing that. She told me as if she regrets it, and that's part of the reason why, I guess, that she insisted that I have to wait. But I'm not buying that for a second, you know. And that's kind of how it is when you're just an average looking man or below average. You might get a chance to have some kind of relationship with a woman, but it's not what you want. It's cursed. Any relationship you can get yourself into as an average looking man is going to be cursed. Okay? Now, maybe if you're really well off, okay, you're rich, maybe it'll be different for you, because that does make a little bit of a difference, I would think. But for most of us, we're not any woman's first choice. If you're an average looking man, you are not a woman's first choice. You're probably not her second choice or her eighth choice, even. Okay? Because she has this little thing in her pocket called a smartphone, and she's got dating apps on it. And she can easily just open up her private messages on Tinder or Hinge or whatever, and she'll have hundreds or even thousands of men messaging her, men that are nearby, close enough to come pick her up that night if she just sends them back a message. Okay? And most of those men are also going to be average looking. But just statistically thinking about it, if she's got 1,000 men in her inbox, okay, at least some of them are better looking than you. They have more money than you. She's going to choose them. The only reason she settles for, a guy like us, the average looking man, is because she feels like she has to settle. Or she feels like for some reason, she can't quite get what she wants out of the better looking men. But you better believe it. You better believe she did give them a chance, okay? she's not getting what she wants out of them, and that's why she settles for you. But they got what they wanted out of her, and they already got what they wanted out of her. Okay, so that's kind of just what it's like dating as an average looking man. You know, just to talk a little bit more about my personal experiences. Okay, I told you about my ex girlfriend, who was my only girlfriend I've ever had. This was when I was 36 years old, by the way, which is how old I am now. That's the age at which I got my first girlfriend. Now, there was a time in my life when I was a teenager, I think was above average looking for a while because I had nice hair. You know, hard to believe now looking at this, but I had pretty nice hair. And that made me good looking because facially, like my face isn't that bad, I think. And yes, I realize I'm not, if I trimmed up my beard right now and maybe shaved my head, it would look a little bit better than it does right now. I didn't really take any measures to make myself look the best I can for this video, but this is how I usually look. I went bald at an early age. I started noticing I was going bald at like 18, 19 years old. By the time I was 22 or 23, it wasn't just me that was noticing it, okay? It was anybody that looked at me. By the time I was 25, full on bald, full on. So I look a little bit better if I shave my head clean with a razor, but I usually don't even feel like doing that. So I kind of leave it like this. There's a little fuzz on there. Doesn't look great, but who cares? Doesn't really make that big a difference. My head has kind of a weird shape, okay? Kind of like an egg, but less smooth. If you could imagine an egg, but it's bumpy, You can definitely tell, I think if you're looking like right here, that's not like a smooth arc, right? It's like, it doesn't look right. It doesn't look good. It almost looks like I've had some kind of head injury at some point. But I haven't. Not that I know of. And I think I already mentioned I have a very small head circumference. But yeah, so going back to my personal experiences with women, which are very few and far between. This was about a year ago now, I think, or maybe earlier this year. The way time passes these days, I don't freaking know, but maybe about a year ago, kind of had a little something going with this woman that lived in my neighborhood. We actually met when I was out taking a walk in the neighborhood with my mom and my baby cousin. And I met this woman. Well, really, my mom started talking to her, and she kind of set up. So, this woman was a single mother, and she had a baby about the same age as my baby cousin, who, if you're new to the channel, my baby cousin is kind of like a son to me. I take care of him, I'm basically his primary caretaker. My mom and I both are. But yeah, so that's how I got to know this woman. Not much happened between us. She was, I said she was a single mother. She actually was married the entire time I know her, and she's still married now, I'm pretty sure, although I haven't really been keeping in contact. But she was estranged from her husband, and she would come over. There was a couple times she came over. She even spent the night, and we slept in the same bed together. Nothing ever happened, which is partially my fault, but at this point, I'm kind of like, I'm fine with the way things turned out because it's pretty clear to see looking back that she was just using me, and she wanted to be with her husband. That's the short and long of it. She wanted to be with her husband, but they had problems. And she was just using me for, somebody to vent to, basically. Somebody that she thought might be able to help her out one way or another, maybe financially. I don't know why she would have thought that. Maybe because I do have, I have a master's degree and a bachelor's degree in, I have a master's degree in computer science, bachelor's degree in an engineering field. So I am qualified to have a high paying job, but I haven't worked in a while because I can't find a job. And yeah. So that's basically the two experiences I've had with women, the two that came like closest to actually anything happening, the close to me actually having any kind of physical romantic interactions with a woman. That's how far it got. My ex-girlfriend, we kissed a few times. Not much. Not really much, okay? And I never saw her naked. She never saw me naked. I'll put it that way. Okay. That's really how it was. And this single mother I'm talking about, I wish her the best, whatever, but she was just using me. She didn't like me. She didn't love me. My ex didn't love me. They were just using me because the guy that they want, or the guy, there's plenty of guys that they want that are ahead of me in the ranking. And I'm just the guy they felt like they needed to settle for in the moment. But I would never be the long-term thing. Until maybe they get really old, right? When they get really old, and maybe they might think, okay, now I really have to settle, and that's when they would settle for me. That's like that's the only chance I would ever possibly have. Because it really does, people don't understand this, okay? For some reason, people always want to say that men are the ones that care about women's looks more than the other way around, right? That women don't really care what a man looks like. You see a beautiful woman with a ugly man all the time. Well, for one, that's not even true. You don't see that many beautiful women with an ugly man. Go out into public today and look around. Do some people watching. Look at all the couples you see. How many couples do you see where it's a beautiful woman and an unattractive man? Not many. Not many. Of course, there are outliers. Like if you go to the middle of downtown of a big city and you see thousands of people and thousands of couples, obviously, just like thinking about these things, like statistically, there are going to be outliers. There are going to be people on the far ends of the bell curve. So yes, you will see it, but you're not going to see it a lot. People think it's more common than it is because when you do see it, it really stands out in your mind. You're like, oh, that ugly son of a gun's got a daggum beautiful wife. How did he land her? Well, probably he's got some money, or maybe they met when they were a lot younger and that guy used to be better looking, perhaps. There's different reasons for these things, okay? But those are outliers. Generally speaking, in the vast majority of cases, okay, and you need to understand this, especially if you are an average looking man, or if you're a woman watching this, especially, I want you to understand this. You can't think of yourself in terms of the outliers that you see. Okay, because most of us are not outliers. We're not going to be in an outlier relationship. Most of us, average looking men, we are going to have the average experience, which is we are invisible. We are never any woman's first choice. Okay? And that extends past romantic things. That extends past relationships and romance, okay? That extends to in your job search, okay? Careers. As an average looking man, And I personally am speaking as an average looking man who is also probably average intellect. Okay. Like I'm just all around average. The only thing I have going for me is that I'm pretty tall. I'm about 6'2", just shy of 6'2". But that doesn't help that much when your head is shaped like this and you're bald and also old and just not very good looking. Okay, it helps, it's good. It's probably the only reason I had any attention from women. Like the experiences that I've had that I talked about briefly already, that probably was like 99% because of my height. But, you know, like I say, in careers, it's just like it is with women. You know, you go into a job interview and you're just average looking, you're an average guy, you're probably not getting the job because there's not enough jobs to go around. Now, it depends the type of job you're getting or you're going for. My experience is with going for white collar tech jobs, engineering jobs. It's been a huge struggle for me. I did a while ago, this was maybe 7 years ago, I think, when I had a good job 6 years ago. It was like 2019 when I quit. Okay, so you can do the math yourself. I had a pretty good job as an engineer, and I quit that to pursue getting my master's degree in computer science, and I was going to do kind of like a career change. That never happened, never worked out. I did get the degree, but I've had no luck. I apply to jobs, can't find jobs. And part of it, I think, is, you know, they see my resume, they Google my name, and they see like the picture of me on LinkedIn, and they see like, oh, no, I don't want to work with this guy. I don't want to work with this bald-headed, peanut head looking, just, you know, you can tell by looking at a picture of me that I'm not someone you want to be around. Because another thing I think is that, you know, people talk about, there's the whole misconception, the myth of the funny fat guy. And it's basically the idea that a guy that is not conventionally attractive, he has to make up for that in other ways by either, you know, having an interesting personality, so being funny or just being entertaining in some way, or just being interesting. Maybe he has interesting hobbies, he's got an interesting perspective, and he just has to compensate with social skills because he's not getting by just on his looks. Well, maybe for some guys they got that effect going on. But I can say for me, and I think probably most average looking guys, we're just average. We're average looking and we're average socially. Now, me, I'm probably on the spectrum, not diagnosed. I just think I probably am because I am really inept socially. I have negative social skills. And the way I look kind of reflects that, you know, because people see the way you look and they make judgments based on how you look. If you look average, they think you are average. Well, actually, if you look average, people think you are below average, because if you look average, people see you and they think he is below average looking. Because people's kind of like perceptions, you know, we think of the scale of who's attractive versus unattractive as like, we're thinking of like famous people and celebrities and actors when we're thinking of that, right? You think like, who's an ugly person? And people, what comes to mind is someone like Steve Buscemi or Jonah Hill, perhaps. right? Now, I'm not saying that Steve Buscemi or Jonah Hill are highly attractive or that even that they are attractive, but they're not really ugly. Okay? Compared to an average ugly person or just an average looking guy that you see in day-to-day life, Steve Buscemi's not really ugly. Okay? Like, so that's how people think of things. So if you're only average looking, people think that you're a below average and they mentally judge you based on your appearance to think, okay, well, he's average looking, he's below average personality wise. And in my case, they are correct. In a lot of cases, they're probably correct. Some cases, they're definitely incorrect. I know there are some of you watching this probably. You're probably ugly as shit. You're probably uglier than me. But you probably have a really interesting life story and you have like an interesting personality and you got a lot of interesting things to say. So it's really not fair how you get judged. But that's how it is. And you know, there used to be a time back in the day before the internet and before social media and LinkedIn and everything, you could apply to jobs and nobody would even know what you look like until you go in for the interview. So you could at least like get the interview, which that gives you like one step closer, right? But nowadays, you can't even get the interview if you're average or below average looking because I don't care who you are. If they've got your full name on your resume and they got a location to go with it, like that's enough information. They can find a picture of you. I don't care if you've even ever uploaded a photo of yourself on the internet. It's probably there and they can probably find it if they've got your name. But for most of us, you know, we have a photo on LinkedIn probably. So they see your name, they get your resume, they look you up, they see what you look like, and they're like, no. And you know what? They might not even think about it like that. It might not just be a hard no based on your appearance, but they see you and then say they get some other resume from, I don't know, some lady, you know, perhaps some young lady or some, you know, she could be in her 30s, whatever. She could be in her 40s, 50s, whatever. People generally would rather be around a woman, especially a young woman, especially if she's attractive. And from the perspective of an older man, because I'm starting to get older myself, I can tell you that the way it works, believe it or not, some of you that are younger, you might not understand this. From an older guy's perspective, if a woman is in her 20s, then she is attractive no matter what. Like, you can't be ugly as a woman if you're young. I know, it's crazy to think about, right? When I was in my 20s, I wouldn't have thought that. But now as a man in his mid to late 30s, it's like, yeah, that is true. That is true. And I just imagine it gets, like, the more you get on in age, the more that effect continues. So the people that are actually doing the hiring, men in their 50s and 60s, or women, you know, they don't want to hire me. They would rather hire any woman that applies, especially if she's younger, because, hey, maybe I can fuck her. That's what they're thinking. They're like, oh, hey, you know, and if not that, then at least it's like, hey, I'd rather be around her than this guy, you know? So, yeah. Another thing about being an average looking man, if you are average looking, right, that means that most men in the world are at least as good looking as you are. So that means that any woman you're dating, she's gonna know, like she knows the entire time she's dating you that he's easily replaceable. You are easily replaceable because you're just average looking. You know, it's easy. She can just pull out her smartphone, look in her DMs, boom, there's thousands, probably at least hundreds. And if not hundreds, then dozens for sure. Dozens of men in her inbox that are better looking than you. Okay, and I know a lot of you want to say, looks aren't everything. Sure, but it's really important. And women care about looks. I mean, I don't know if we're not on the same page on that, then I don't even know why you're listening to the video this far into it. Women do care about looks, okay? And if you're average looking, you're easily replaceable. If you're below average looking, then you're probably not even in a relationship in the first place, so there's no reason to even talk about this. Now, I don't want this to come off as just depressing, deprecating, and, I don't want you to think that I'm saying you should just give up and you shouldn't even try. Well, let me put it this way. I think you can still live your life as an average looking man. Like, it's still worth living. You're not going to find love. You're not going to have a woman that loves you other than your mom. But, you're not going to have a romantic interaction with a woman that loves you. You're not going to have a relationship. You're not going to have true love. You're not ever going to probably start a family. And if you do, it'll be with a woman that she just settled for you for one reason or another. You weren't her first choice. And, you can try and pull the wool over your eyes, but you probably will know it, You probably know it. I think most of us, even the most blue-pilled normies out there, deep down, you know what the real deal is. You know that if you're just an average-looking man or perhaps below average, your wife, she thinks she probably could do better. She wants to do better, and she probably would dump you and leave you to go do better with a better-looking guy in an instant if the opportunity should present itself in a way that she perceives there's low enough risk. So, with that said, it sounds horrible, and it is, but I do think life is still worth living for an average-looking guy. Even a below-average-looking guy. Like, yes, there are levels to this. I know some of you watching this, you're probably seeing me and you're like, well, okay, I'm way uglier than this guy, so he doesn't even know what it's like in my life. And you're right, if you are significantly worse looking than I am, then yes, I can't really, it's hard for me to even comprehend what your situation is like. But I do understand there's a lot of you out there, and yeah, it obviously must suck, because as bad as my life is, you have all the things that are bad in my life, you've got it worse, okay? I know there's a lot of you out there that it's like that. And I can sympathize with that, of course. But I think even in that case, I think life is worth living, And in a lot of ways, I think I'm in the same boat as you, even though I'm slightly better looking. So why do I say life is worth living, even though you'll probably never be able to start a family, you'll never find true love, it's always an uphill battle for you, financially speaking, trying to get your career off the ground, career advancement and all that. Why is it still worth living? Well, I think just because, you can cope. You can watch movies. Sometimes you might, you kind of got to dig into the back catalog these days. Movies they're coming out with these days, for the most part, aren't that great. But there's a lot of good movies. You can watch some Stanley Kubrick films, Akira Kurosawa, Seven Samurai. That's a good movie. You can watch that. It's really long, too. So, right there, that's like 3.5 hours that was worth living. And then you can do that multiple times. Wait a year, watch it again. So every year, just from watching Seven Samurai once per year, that's 3.5 hours every single year that was definitely worth living. So if you just extend that, you can play a good video game. You can listen to music that you enjoy. And there's other things, you can personally, I kind of like I like to go on a bike ride and listen to music, and it just kind of feels good and it's enjoyable. And you can go out in nature, just like sit there, listen to the birds and the sounds of nature, a babbling brook or something like that, It's things like that, yes, it's coping, but it works pretty well, and I think in those moments, life is worth living. Now, you can argue that those brief moments, that doesn't make it all worth it in the long run, because there's more moments that are bad. And I can understand that perspective, but in my opinion, all I can say is from my own perspective, in my opinion, it is worth living because of the copes we can do. Whenever you get to thinking about like it's not worth living, then I would recommend go on a bike ride or go on a walk or try watching Seven Samurai or something, or another movie. That's just one that I like. But yeah, I know this was kind of all over the place. I might delete this, I don't know. But just wanted to make this video real quick because I feel like a whole lot of people really don't understand how bad it is for an average looking man. A lot of people think that, well, most people are coping to the extent that they think that even a below average looking guy, they say things like, it's all about confidence, it's all about personality, it's all about your mindset. You got to have the abundance mindset. They say a bunch of horse hockey like that. I'm a bit more of a realist. I operate within the realm of reality, so I'm not gonna lie to you about that. And so I just wanted to make this video real quick. So maybe some normal blue-pilled everyday folks, maybe even some women will see this, and maybe they'll be able to gain a bit of an understanding from the perspective of an average looking man, perhaps below average, judge for yourself, about what it's really like living life as an average looking man. It's not all about confidence. It's not, and by the way, with confidence, confidence comes from your life experiences. If you constantly get beat down by life and women act like you're invisible, then you're not gonna be confident. You can't just be confident, and you can't fake it till you make it. That's nonsense. Okay, that doesn't work either. So, yeah, this is what it's like. It's not great, but you can still watch a good movie sometimes. So, maybe that's worth it to you. To me, yeah, I guess it is.